Hey guys, welcome to the Kevin and King podcast. Today we're talking about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. King, did you like the movie?
Yeah, this movie pretty much combined all of my favorite interests. It had history, old school Hollywood, true crime, bloody vengeance, just a whole lot of everything. Brad Pitt looking awesome and Leonardo getting to act. Pretty much everything I wanted it to be. What'd you think of it?
So, honestly, the whole movie I enjoyed from like start to end. I did get really lost, and I'm going to be really honest about this right now. I had no idea what was actually going on in the movie or what the purpose of the movie was at all until the end. And then everything happened, and even after everything happened, Tammy looked up the stuff at the end, and I looked over and I was like, "So what was that movie about?" And she told me, and I was just like, "Oh my god, it all makes sense now." But until that point,
Yeah.
this was after the movie, after the credits, after like a bunch of little TV shows that I was watching inside of a movie, and I was just like, "Man, I want to stop watching this, but I can't. I'm addicted," and it kept going as it went, and the confusion of my mind like kept me there as well. So I honestly really enjoyed the movie.
This is an incredibly dense movie. Like, it's just packed with so many things, like the history of the time, like all of Tarantino's little like memories of his childhood and all of his little quirks, like the people like that he always has in his movies as small or big roles. The fake brands that he always puts into his movies, like Red Apple cigarettes, that are probably more prominent in this than they've been in any other of his other movies. There is so much going on.
Yeah, there was a lot going on, and I was just enthralled about how much was going on, and just what was happening. It was great for me.
So what I wanted to do before we really got started was just talk about some of the things that were happening in the U.S. and around the world at the time that this movie came out. So this is Hollywood 1969. Last year, the swinging 60s, a heavy combination of like people clinging to the 50s and people ready to move on to the 70s. And there's counterculture versus like the established culture. There's all kinds of protests going on because of the war, because of environmental issues. Richard Nixon was sworn in as president. Led Zeppelin released their first album in the U.S. The Beatles released Abbey Road and the White Album, I think. The White Album might have been the year before, but Elvis Presley started his comeback career. The first Boeing 747 jumbo jet was flown, and the U.S. started bombing, covertly bombing Cambodia in Operation Breakfast, which is one of the dumbest names I've ever heard. But people were starting to really get some backlash towards Vietnam, and 69 is also when the draft happened. So there was a lot of very passionate feeling, like for and against the government and the U.S. as a whole. So there's just so much going on. Also, Midnight Cowboy was released. It's the only X-rated movie to ever win the Best Picture Oscar. The first person to die of AIDS happened in '69. They wouldn't prove that until the '80s, but at the time he just died of a baffling condition that no one had ever seen before. We landed on the moon, you know, and then in August of that year, Sharon Tate and four of her friends were all murdered in the Beverly Hills at 10050 CeeLo Drive. So that's the context of the movie. A lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, so with like you bringing up the context after the movie was done, I was like, I was sitting there talking to Tammy, and we were just going over the movie and everything, we both had this thought. It was like, this movie is a totally different movie for someone who actually knew about Sharon Tate and all that stuff that was going on, than to somebody who had no idea about the movie and they just went in and said because they wanted to watch a Quentin Tarantino movie. Like, the movie that I saw is completely different than the movie that you saw, and I'm like,
Right.
I'm wondering, is if like how does that differentiate our opinions or like what we've seen, like, and that's mind blowing to me, and I actually like it, and just you.
Yeah, if you don't know about the Manson family murders going into this, or who Sharon Tate was, it's a completely different movie, because then you've got all these like cutaways from Brad and Leo, because they're like the two main characters, to Margot Robbie as Sharon Tate, who in the movie she's very sweet and like very nice, and she's going around, she's going shopping, she's going to parties with her husband, but why the fuck is that in there? Like, if you don't know what's coming, this just seems like an irresponsible amount of time to who knows what. Like, when you know that Sharon Tate, the Sharon Tate from the Manson family murders, like, I mean, since you didn't know about it, I'm assuming you had very different feelings from me, but the entire time it was building to what I knew was coming, and like every nice and sweet moment you see of her, like, you get this dread, and then it cuts forward to August, and she's 8.5 months pregnant. It's just like, oh, it's coming. So it's like the movie for the most part is really fun and in some ways endearing, and it's got cool action, sporadic action and everything, but it's also got this undercurrent of dread for what's coming next, and for me that was awesome. But without that context, like, were you just confused by it all, or?
Oh, I was amazingly confused through the whole thing. You bringing that up. So at the end of the movie, the way that I was like, oh, why Sharon Tate was in the movie, at the end of the movie, I had a thought. I was like, oh, so the whole point of them being in the movie and living there is that Leo's character, Rick, finally got to be in the in-group again. He's not a outcast cowboy. He's going to get parts. That's what I made in my head is why they were in the movie. But other than that, I was super confused. I was just like, yeah, why are they in the movie? I don't know why this is significant. But I made this thing up in my head. I even like looked over at Tim. I was like, oh, so that's why they were there. And she's like, no.
Well, I mean, that is a part of it. Like, that's what that's the glue that holds it together. But
yeah, but
I thought it. Go on.
No, yeah, but I mean, I was like, at the end when it ended, I was like, oh, because there's a scene earlier that he was saying, oh man, if I could go to one party with them and do one thing, I'm in again, and that whole thing happened, and then that happened and he gets invited up. I was like, okay, that's the point of the movie. He got invited up. He's back in. So.
Yeah. Really. Fun that it works on both levels like that. My parents are a little bit older. They were just reaching their teenage years when it happened, and this event was fucking massive. Like, it was international news, because she was a young and upcoming actress. She'd had some pretty mixed reviews as far as the movies she had been in up to that point. But she was also married to Roman Polanski, who at the time was mostly just known for Rosemary's Baby, which is a movie I can't fucking stand. It's boring as shit. Sorry for everyone who thinks it's a classic. That movie is lame. But at the time, it was a huge movie. So like he was the golden boy or one of the golden boys at Hollywood at that point because he was just coming in and this was also where like the auteur movement in Hollywood really started taking place because prior to this, most directors were just contracted to do a set number of films for a studio, like no matter what. Like they didn't really get to pick their products. I mean, there was a little bit of picking products or projects, but for the most part, it was like, okay, we're gonna sign this contract. You're gonna make 3 movies for us, and they could be whatever we want. So, like, if the studio was smart, they would put them onto movies to really highlight their talent. Like if they're a horror director, they're doing horror. If they're action, then they're doing action. But it could also mean somebody like Orson Welles could end up doing just a dog shit movie. But in the 60s, well, it started a little bit before this, but really, like, people like Polanski and Hitchcock and a couple other people really started busting out as, like, we just need to give this guy money, and he will make us a movie that is a fucking juggernaut. So, like, he was a really hot commodity at the time, and he was married to Sharon Tate. And then she gets murdered along with the heiress to the Folgers and Jay Sebring, one of her best friends, who was essentially the hairstylist to the stars. He knew everyone. He introduced Bruce Lee to Polanski, and Bruce Lee taught him a bit of kung fu. And he also introduced him to Steve McQueen, so he taught him. So he was moving and shaking all over the place. And then they all get murdered, and it's not just that they got murdered, it's that they got brutally murdered. Like, those crimes were horrific. Then there was 2 more that followed the next day. And so, when it's found out who did it, the Manson family, you've got, like, America's sweetheart, an 8.5-month pregnant woman that gets slaughtered by this group of filthy, crusty hippies, and like everyone who got killed there, except for one guy who got shot, everyone else just got stabbed to death, and it wasn't like stabbed once or twice. It's like 40 or 50 times. Like, it's brutal.
Yeah, I think they said that.
And so,
I think that I was reading that Sharon Tate got stabbed 16 times, and she was dead by the 5th one or something like that, and they just kept going.
well, part of that is because to make sure none of them could rat on each other, they made everyone who went there stab everybody so that they were all complicit with each one.
Oh. Wow.
Yeah, I know, weird detail, but it ended up causing more carnage. And then, like, they also wrote a pig on the front door in Sharon Tate's blood. Wild and incredibly gruesome. And then there is one slightly funny thing. The next night they murdered 2 other people, and that's not the funny thing, obviously. But one of them, she's called Katie in this because all the Manson family went by several different names, but she was also known as Big Patty, and she wrote Helter Skelter, which was their insane idea of starting a race war based off the Helter Skelter song by the Beatles, except she wrote it as Heelter Skelter. So, like, she added in an extra E like the fucking idiot she was. Like, those people suck, but it's just like, you had one job, and you blew it.
Didn't all this happen because Manson, like, the guy who owned the houses or whatever, Manson lived with him for a little while, and the guy promised him, like, a huge music career or something, so that's why he wanted to get back at them?
No, that's well, it's kind of hard to say because there's the prosecutor's narrative when he was when it all went to trial and he was trying to put Manson away, and then there's also Manson's own words. But Manson was also like completely burned out of his mind on acid for like a majority of this whole time, and so like his narrative can't be trusted, but the prosecutors get stuff wrong. But mainly, the guy who used to live there, Terry something, fuck, I can't remember his last name. He was a music producer, and Manson had been trying to get a music career going, and he knew one of the Beach Boys, Dennis. Can't remember his last name. But he got in with the Beach Boys, and the Beach Boys might have stolen a song from him. Like, there's definitely some. Yeah.
Do you know what song? I kind of want to go listen to it now.
No.
I'm gonna look that up after this.
They changed most of the lyrics because Manson's lyrics were pretty fucking terrible, but like the actual music and his voice were pretty good. So so the music producers were trying to get him to work as like a novelty, but every time they put him in the studio and tried to produce him, he wouldn't listen to their advice, and he wouldn't follow their directions because, like, man, you're ruining my music, that kind of shit. So eventually, like, the deal falls through. He doesn't get a music deal, and he's trying to keep his family members with him because, like, really all he's wanting to do is take all these people out to the desert and bone forever. But you know, as with all cult leaders, like, you got to keep building this story of like why you need to stay together, and that usually results in violence. Because it's just like, what do I tell these people that I've manipulated to be my underlings to keep them around? And you know, like with Jonestown, it was that the government was gonna take them down and kill them. So they had to stay together for that, and then it became like, we got to kill ourselves before they kill us. With Heaven's Gate, it was like, all right, well, we got to stay together, so like we all got to kill ourselves to get on that comet so that we can go to heaven. You know, just like, and it sounds insane, like who the fuck follows these people? But it's a very slow build where it starts off as just like, I've got a new idea about Christianity, or like, I know how to expand your mind with drugs, like just little tiny baby steps, and then it just keeps rolling and rolling, and it almost without fail gets out of control, and it leads to either death or murder.
Yeah.
Like, most of the time. So, anyways, the deal falls through. So Manson starts pumping this narrative that there's a race war going on, and it's kind of like improv. He just kept on getting yes and, so like he'd say that, and his followers would be like on board, but then he's got to keep going, and he's got to keep going, and so they end up killing a mescaline dealer, and then one of the guys who did it, like 2 days after the murder, gets picked up in the guy's car, wearing bloody clothes, with the murder weapon in the wheel well of the car. So he gets picked up, and Manson and his followers are trying to figure out what to do. And as far as I can tell, it was his followers that suggested it and not him. But they were like, all right, well, we got to do another murder. And so he was like, all right, you gotta do somebody, like rich, you know. We gotta make this look like the Black Panthers did it, so that we can start the race war, so that we can go hide in the desert, and then afterwards we'll come out, and those black people will need us to lead the world because they can't. Like, real stupid, racist, dumb shit. But he throws out the suggestion of, like, go to a house like Terry's old house, because he knew that Terry didn't live there anymore.
Yeah.
Because, like seen in the movie, he shows up looking for money and looking for Terry, and Terry's not there, and he gets shooed away for being a gross hippie, and he's like, "Oh man, can you tell me where he lives?" And they're like, "No, we're not telling you where he lives. Get the fuck out of here."
Yeah.
So they end up, like, he allegedly, this is in his own words. He said, "I don't know, just go pick a house like Terry's old house." And they were like, "Okay," so we go and pick Terry's house, like, kill whoever's in there. That's how it happened to be Sharon Tate and her friends.
Jeez, that's crazy. Like how twisted things can get, and those people are just at the wrong place. If they would have lived in Rick's house, they would have been fine. Like that's just so super sad, and that shit like that can happen.
Yeah, it's incredibly sad. We've also gotten way off topic. Let's get back to the movie.
Okay. But I
right.
but honestly, I think that's like super great context for it because I didn't know any of that, and it kind of makes all the scenes that had the hippies in it and had like when they went to the compound and everything, there was a sense of foreshadowing there, like some eeriness to every single one of those scenes that happened. And if you didn't know any of that, if you didn't know any of that background or anything, I would have just been like, man, there's just some weird tension in these scenes that Tarantino wants us to feel weird, and maybe something's gonna happen, and maybe something's not. But that kind of explains why there was so much eerie foreshadowing that every time something with a hippie or something with that compound or something with those people came up, he did that. But so it makes sense. Like that's really good to know.
Also, for you, it just felt like a weird scene. For me, like there was this tension in it that I was like, I don't know if Brad Pitt's gonna be in the rest of this movie. Like he might die right here, and I was like, I was kind of tensed against it because I was just like, oh, I hope not. But like, yeah, dude, that was a
yeah, 100%. 100%. I thought he was going to die, or at least get like captured by them, and then Rick was going to go in there and save him somehow. I don't know, but I thought something bad was going to happen, and then how that scene ended, he just driving off. I was just like, what? What just happened? I was like,
yeah.
Okay. I mean,
yeah.
It was a super funny scene though. Like it was super. The whole scene was amazing, to be honest. Like, and then how it ended was just like, whoa, okay, weird.
Yeah, that scene carried a lot for a short scene, and like a lot of the other scenes, like some of them feel more necessary than others. But that one's doing a lot in that because for the people who know what comes or what should come later per history, like it's really tense, and especially because Cliff Booth is like inspired by a couple of real people, but he's not a real person himself. Like it's just very very tense that like he could die. Like there's that definite possibility, and then it also when Clem stabs his tire and he beats the shit out of him, like it also shows you just his capacity for violence. Like you had already seen him fight Bruce Lee, and so you kind of get some context that like he is a very capable man, but this one shows you really how dangerous Cliff Booth is, like because he thinks nothing of beating the shit out of this guy. And then like when the girls like start coming closer, like he has a darkness in him, and he's just like, take one step closer and I will knock out all of his goddamn teeth. And like it's just like, oh shit, like he's got quite the edge on him.
Yeah, like I totally got that from him, and honestly, the whole time that scene was happening, it felt like he never was scared in the moment. He was just like, I'm going to be able to handle what was happening because I'm so much of a badass,
Yeah, he's absolutely the epitome of cooler than cool, like
Yeah.
throughout the whole thing. Um,
So
I also oh yeah, go ahead.
before getting away from that scene, um, that place, like that place, is real, and the guy,
Spawn Ranch.
yeah, that place is real, right? And then the guy who
Yeah,
he like goes to see,
George Spawn.
that guy's a real guy too, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, and he,
yeah,
like
and Spawn Ranch was a very popular place for shooting westerns, usually for TV. Like that's what it was for the most part. And George Spawn owned it. He was about 80 years old, and when the Mansons, like when Charles Manson and his followers came in, uh, Squeaky Frome, who's played by Dakota Fanning in this, she does end up like living in the house with him because everyone else had to live in these shitty little they were called outlaw cabins. But she gets a room in George's house because she rubbed him off like a lot. So like he's an old blind guy. She's like, "Hey man, I'll suck your dick if you let me get a good bed." And he was like,
Yeah.
"All right."
and he was there when all this like crazy stuff was happening as well, like Manson and all that. Like he was there.
Yeah, near the end, he was trying to sell the land, because he's 80. He doesn't want to deal with any of this shit anymore. He's blind.
Yeah.
And that was also a contributing factor for the Mansons doing what they did, is because like they were about to lose where they were living, and so like Manson was trying to get him out to the desert because he had this really weird like urge to go live in the desert and convert VW bugs into dune buggies and just go live out in the desert. And the dune buggies are actually what got him caught because naturally they were just stealing these cars and trying to soup them up to be dune buggies. So like the cops raided for the stolen cars, and then they were like, something's real weird about this group. And then I think it was Sadie was just like chatting with her with her cellmate, and was just like, "Oh yeah, we killed some people," and that
Oh my god.
that all tumbled down. Yeah, just dumbass. Like more than anything, the Manson, like nobody in the Manson family was bright. They were all real fucking stupid.
Yeah. Alright. Having explained all that, we can definitely get back to the movie now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Man, I hope nobody was looking for a straightforward review because I don't got it.
Yeah. I mean, I knew that you were coming in with this, and I was looking forward to this, and this is kind of the stuff that I would like wanted to look up and everything, but I was like, I'm gonna let King tell me. So.
All right, so first off, I absolutely love the dynamic between Leo and Brad Pitt, Rick Dalton and Cliff Booth. Like there's such a interesting quality to their friendship because Cliff Booth was Rick Dalton's stunt double back in the 50s when he was doing Bounty Law, and then since then, like he still is his stunt double on the occasions where he can actually get work, but for the most part, he just becomes kind of like a purchased friend. So he's well, a friend slash like butler. He's kind of like Batman's Alfred if Alfred was the one actually going out and fighting crime while Batman just did the playboy lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's like Leo and Brad Pitt are great anyways. I think this might be one of Brad Pitt's best roles though. Like he is cooler than cool. He's still like very good shape for being 55. He's also like 8 years older than Leo, which is kind of funny. Because at one point, Al Pacino's like, "What's this, your son?" It's just like, huh, that's That's not right.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Yeah. Speaking of that, how good he looks. Tammy and her sister were just like, oh my god, he looked so amazing in that movie. And we were like, he's a 55-year-old man. And they were like, it doesn't matter. Did you see his body? And I was just like, yeah.
yeah, dude, I was getting the vapors
Yeah.
looking at him.
Yeah. I mean, he definitely looked really good in this movie.
And they also added a bunch of like scars and everything to show that like he is a man who has lived a lot of life. Like he was a war hero, maybe killed his wife, but he's also a professional stuntman, and professional stuntmen get hurt. That's kind of their job. Um, After I watched the movie, I was looking up some other stuff, like listening to the cast and Tarantino like talk about it, and then just like other videos around it. And one person described Brad Pitt as Rick Dalton's sin eater. So like, while Rick Dalton's the one that looks good on camera and gets to like have the movie career and do all the hero shots and like gets all the money, um, Brad Pitt's the one doing all the work. Like he's he's the one behind the scenes making everything happen, or like in front of the scenes, but you know, as a stuntman. Uh, but he's the reason everything works. It kind of reminds me of Fight Club when he plays Tyler Durden, and I'm not sure if this is just because it's Brad Pitt in both roles, but he's got this one quote. It's something like, "I will I will drag you kicking and screaming, and in the end, you will thank me." Because like he's the one. He puts Leo to bed. He gets him up in the morning. He drives him around. He handles all of his little tasks that he can't be bothered to do himself, climbing up on the roof to fix the antenna. And then in the end, during the climax, which like I don't want to get to the climax yet, but just after the climax, Cliff Booth is going to the hospital after he's done almost everything. Rick Dalton gets to go to the party.
Yeah.
So like, even outside of like he's kind of still his stuntman in real life. Well, not real life, but in the movies, real life. So like same thing. Like he's the one getting thrown off the building or hit by the car, while Rick gets to smile and look good for the cameras.
Yeah. But the thing with that, I think, like, to me, in the whole movie, I actually felt that there was a real bond between those two. Like, they both actually cared about each other, even though one was famous and the other was just the stunt double that, like you said, might have killed his wife. But I felt that they had a true friendship, and that Brad Pitt's character would actually do anything for Leo's character. And I like that. I think that relationship made the movie. Without that relationship, without those two actors, the movie itself wouldn't have been so fun to watch.
Oh yeah, absolutely. What did you think about him killing his wife though, or like, allegedly, you know, however you want to say it?
I don't know. They never answer it. They never do anything. But I thought it was like I thought it was a really funny thing to put into the movie. That was just like, you're always questioning: is he a bad guy? Is he a good guy? Is he going to end up killing Rick? Like what? Like what's happening? I liked that it was in the movie, but at the same time, if it wasn't, I don't know if it would have taken away from anything, to be honest.
It's such a bizarre thing to throw in there, and it kind of has the vibes of like what happened to Natalie Wood. She was on a boat with her husband and ended up dying. I don't remember the exact details of that one, but like under possibly sketchy circumstances, she ends like they go out on a boat together, and at the end of it, she's dead and he's not. And I don't think got I don't think he was found guilty. I'm not even sure if it went to trial, but it's just seemed like it was maybe alluding to that. I'm not sure why exactly, because like I said, I haven't looked up that case in a while. But anyways, that's the vibe I got from it. So also, I really loved how this movie blended real character or real people and Tarantino characters together. Um, like there's Steve McQueen and they mention well they say Sergio something else instead of Sergio Leone, who's best known for spaghetti westerns, but just all these people that kind of pop in. Two of the members of the Mamas and the Papas, Mama Cass and Michelle. Oh, I can't remember her last name, but it was just throwing in all these real people mixed with all these Tarantino characters, and they all worked really well together. Like none of it seemed too far out, except for Bruce Lee, kind of.
Did you have a problem with the Bruce Lee scene? Because that kind of
A
made me.
little, a little bit. Everyone else in this movie, all the real people at least, they all come off pretty, pretty positively, but Bruce Lee comes off a little bit like it just feels a little bit harsh to his legacy. I know his daughter isn't happy about about like the way he's written, and neither was one of Bruce Lee's biographers. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Bruce Lee, and I have some positives and negatives about how he was portrayed by Mike Moe. I think he did a pretty good job with the dialogue and the enunciation. I think he kind of nailed that. But they also dressed up Bruce as he was like in like the days of Enter the Dragon and Way of the Dragon and um, oh man, now I can't think of his other movies. But but he didn't look like that when he was filming the Green Hornet. He had much shorter hair and didn't have glasses, as far as I can tell from pictures. That's more just about like making sure people know it's Bruce. And I think Mike Moe was pretty dead on for the most part, except like I mean his nose is a little bit bigger, his eyes are a little bit different than Bruce's, but for the most part he kind of nailed that. Kung fu noises, the hua, like that's all stuff Bruce Lee did, but it just didn't sound nearly as authentic. Like especially for how well he did the voice and everything, those just sounded almost like a parody of it. So
Yeah.
that didn't really sit quite right with me.
Well,
But
and
also he just comes off as such a like blowhard.
yeah, and I can totally see that, and maybe the sounds and stuff. The reason like it came off like that is because honestly, in any other martial arts movie or anything, nobody really does. I mean, they do stuff like that, but not like Bruce Lee did. So it kind of seems like mockery, I guess. But that's how he did his stuff. And at the same time, I don't think Bruce Lee. I think the character that they portrayed in this movie was more of Bruce Lee's on-screen character rather than Bruce Lee's real life character, if that makes sense. Like that's not who he actually was in real life as much as it was as his portrayal of his characters and his like image, if that makes any sense.
Hmm. Well, I mean, Bruce Lee was a very confident dude, and to a lot of people that came off as arrogance, but he could also back it up with his skill. And I was talking to my brother about this, and I think he brings up a good point. Like Bruce Lee kind of comes off worse out of the two in their little sparring match, even though like it does come out as a tie, I guess. Uh, but my brother was saying, well, yeah, like against like any normal person, Bruce Lee's going to almost certainly kick the shit out of him. I mean, there's certainly people that could probably like hang with him, like Cliff Booth did, but chances are pretty good that like anyone he runs into on set, because he didn't back down from challenges. If somebody wanted to fight him, he'd fight him. But what my brother was saying, like anyone else, obviously Bruce Lee's gonna win. But this is Bruce Lee against a Quentin Tarantino character, and Quentin Tarantino characters, like especially the protagonists, do not really lose, you know. So
Yeah.
I think that's a good point. It also shows off just how capable uh, uh, Cliff Booth, Brad Pitt's character, is. Um, Although I would have liked to show a different kind of style from Cliff compared to Bruce, because they both kind of hang with each other, like matching move for move during their third round, if you will. Uh, Whereas I think it would have been better if Cliff was more of like a brawler. Um, like Bruce was able to get in short, quick hits, but he just had like he had the reflexes and the power, but like mainly he had more power. So like, you know, like Bruce Lee would get him on a good combo, but he'd come back with like just like a quick or a powerful punch to the gut or something. I mean, like that's really nitpicky of me, but I think it would have been more interesting than watching two guys throw down in a martial arts way, like with a similar style to him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand. I don't know. Bruce. Okay, so Bruce Lee to me is kind of like Chuck Norris, but he's obviously a much better fighter than Chuck Norris. But it's kind of everybody makes the joke, oh, if Chuck Norris was there, he can like punch through a mountain or do some crazy shit. Bruce Lee's kind of like that to a lot of people as well. So just I don't know, in that role, I think he didn't seem as strong as Brad Pitt's character, and maybe that's what a lot of people had like problems with and stuff. But the like fighting thing, I didn't see a problem with it.
Yeah, I didn't have like I'm not trying to complain about it too much. Overall, like I'm pretty fine with it. It just seemed like everyone else got a much nicer portrayal, and then he came off as a bit more of an antagonist or an asshole than any of the other real people
Yeah,
being portrayed.
I think if they wouldn't have made him as arrogant as they portrayed him, maybe he would have seemed a little bit better. But I mean, like he was arrogant in real life. He would take fights and stuff. So I don't know. I don't know if it's just us or people and everybody seeing it in a different way than what maybe that's how he would have acted in that time.
Well, I mean, I think he would have, but I think it was just a little bit extra that made it kind of come off as parody instead of flattery.
Yeah, and I think maybe Tarantino could have done something a little bit to fix that, but it's his movie, so he can do what he wants.
Yeah, and overall, I'm not terribly concerned about it, but I figured it was worth noting.
I did, though. There is one thing that I want to say about that scene. I did like that whole scene was brought about when Brad Pitt went onto the roof to fix a thing, and he was like upset about the guy not wanting him to do the stunt thing, and then it cuts away from after the fight and stuff, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I understand. Like it makes sense."
Yeah, fair enough.
That's why they showed that whole scene. There was no real significance to it. It was just there because he was having a memory. I thought that was super funny.
Well, it also did show like why, like maybe why, besides just friendship, that he's willing to be a kind of like servant to Rick Dalton, is because he can't really get very much work anymore because a lot of people don't like him because he maybe killed his wife, and also he he straight up fights one of the stars of the show just because like he wasn't gonna back down from it. So it's just like he kind of comes off like to the other people on set as a liability, uh, but throughout the movie we're shown just how capable he is. It's kind of like that scene with him and his dog. So he drops off Rick Dalton at his house, gets out of the Lincoln, walks around to his much tinier blue car. Uh, that's definitely worse for wear. And like every time he's driving the Lincoln, he's slow, he's obeying the rules of the road, like he's just cruising. But then when he gets to his car, he fucking rips it into high gear and tears it across town. And it also shows just how different their economic situations are, because Rick's got this big house and this hideous mural in his driveway, and he's living next to Polanski and Tate. Meanwhile, Brad Pitt's got to drive all the way through the hills and then on the highway and then to this tiny little trailer behind a drive-in movie theater where like his car doesn't have anything to cover it if it rains. His weights, he doesn't have enough room in his house, so they have to be out in the rain as well. And he gets home and it's just him and his dog. And my God, was Brandy so adorable in this. Like that dog was so cute. And I really liked it. Like he opens the door and then just gets down on the ground so the dog can give him like the proper dog greeting. And then he goes to make dinner, and he makes like he's kind of a slob, and his dinner is just boxed macaroni, and the dog food looked pretty gross.
Dude, that was atrocious. That whole scene, the dog food scene, and then the bowl, that was just disgusting.
Yeah, but it did also show just how well he had trained Brandy, because he tells her to sit on the chair. She sits on the chair, and she's completely quiet but very excited while he's opening up Wolf Tooth brand. Like one of them was labeled rat, another one was raccoon flavored, like bird flavor, like not even a type of bird, just bird flavored, like just. Some about that was so fun. Like that whole scene was pretty funny to me, but it is good foreshadowing for just how well trained he's got Brandy, because she almost starts to whimper, and he's like, "Hey, don't you do it. I will throw this fucking food away. I don't want to, but I will." And then like as soon as he gives the order to her, she hops down there and goes straight for the food. But until that time, she does not move, except for her tail wagging.
Yeah. It foreshadows, like, what happens at the end and stuff, too. Like,
right. While that scene kind of seems like useless and kind of padding out the time, I think it actually does quite a bit of duty, because it shows just how differently he lives from Leo, and also how differently he acts. Because like he's happy to see his dog, and he's living in really gross conditions in a tiny trailer. But when he's with Rick Dalton, like he's driving the Lincoln, he's cool as a cucumber, like and like he's also building up Leo. Like when Leo goes to play the bad guy, Caleb Dekatu, on that film set, like, even though Leo's just like, get out of here, go fix my shit, see you after rap, like, just kind of dismisses him like that. I mean, like, I think because they seem like they're good friends, like, it wasn't mean intended or anything, but it does kind of come off as like, yeah, you go run my errands for me, but even still, Brad Pitt still like gives him one last boost of encouragement. He's like, hey, you're Rick fucking Dalton, don't you forget it. So, I really like that, and that whole Western scene was wild.
Yes, it was. Dude, everything about the whole Western place, and then when he was also in his trailer, when he took a break into his trailer, jeez. Like,
Oh man, what a good scene.
everything, like, everything about the Western scene and the trailer and all of that that had Leo in it was actually some of the most brilliant acting and movie things that has ever happened. Like, it was so good to me, and I was just completely captivated about his acting and what was going on and everything. It was top notch.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought that little girl, she calls herself Maribella because that's her character's name. I can't remember what. Well, it's her character within a character's name. I can't remember what her actual character's name is, but or what the actress's name is.
She's
But
from the TV show American Housewife. She's the daughter in that. I know that.
right. But I thought she did a fantastic job.
Oh, she was great. Yeah.
Okay, so he goes on set. He gets put into hair and makeup. He gets the droopy mustache and the long hair, so he looks like a biker. And then and then he has his talk with the little girl. And I kind of got the feeling that the story, the book that he was reading, was kind of alluding to what was happening with Brad Pitt. Like, he used to be the best, now he's gotten older, and then at the end of the movie, like, he ends up getting a hip injury. Like, I wasn't sure if that was parallels Tarantino was trying to make, or if I just kind of, like, put that together anyways. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I didn't put that together until you just said something, but I don't know if that was intentional or not.
I think there's a case to be made for it, but I don't know if it actually was. But anyways, so he has the talk with that little girl, and it kind of, I think it kind of inspires him to be better because like, he's kind of more old school Hollywood of, like, you root for the guy because he's the hero, and like, you practice your lines, you have your lines memorized, and then you act them on the day. Whereas the girl is trying to be more method with it. She wants to be known as her character. She is focused on her craft, so she's skipping lunch so she's not sluggish in her scene after lunch. Like, all these things that Rick Dalton isn't, or at least isn't anymore. Look, he's either lost or never had that kind of, like, 100% devotion to the craft. But I think she kind of brings it out in him to strive for that.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Yeah.
And then after that, he goes and he does his first couple of scenes, and it's going really well, and it's shot like it's actually a movie instead of so, like, you get, like, camera pans and tilts and zooms and all that stuff like an actual movie, instead of like, it being like, shot, cut, let's move the camera over here, so like, the camera that we, the audience, is watching, it is a little bit fourth wall, where, like, it's doing the shots, but it's cut as a movie instead of, like, behind the scenes. Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah. I get what you're saying.
Like, especially at one part, where he forgets one of his lines, the camera does this smooth dolly around Timothy Olyphant's character, and then he messes up his line, and it kind of breaks the illusion. So then they reset the camera to go around the other, like to go back around Timothy Olyphant's head, so that they can start that shot again with the same movement. Which, I mean, me as a film major, like that kind of stuff, like it kind of breaks the fourth wall, but at the same time, I also really appreciate it because it's a neat little nod to the business of making movies.
Yeah, I thought it was really good, and just the way that it made the scenes lay out in the movie, and it just in that time, it felt like it was meant to go in and out of that. If that makes sense, I know what I'm trying to say, but I don't know how to verbalize it. But yeah, I thought it was done really good. It was very good cinematography. Like, I was very impressed by how he was filming a scene of a TV show within a movie.
Yeah, it had it had some really good camera tricks to make it both immersive, but also remind you that it's not that it's like a film within a film. So he messes up a couple of his lines, and then he goes back to his trailer where he throws a tantrum. Fantastic scene, fantastically acted, and also just really good character development on Rick.
Yeah, it was probably one of the most accurate tantrum like fit that anybody has ever portrayed in a scene, because he was literally doing what people do all the time. Like, it's like he did this in real life. Like, he acted out something that happened to him before, and then he just recreated it for this movie. It was so good, and it was so funny. Like, it was so hilarious that I was like cracking up during this super intense but yet amazingly funny scene.
Yeah, I mean, once again, it shows just how much of an actor that Leo is. But like, it's played for laughs, but it's also like a really brutal show of just of how much of a mess that Rick Dalton is. Like, he spent all night memorizing his lines, but he was also drinking, and he drank way more than he should have. And so, like, he's hungover when he gets there, and he messes up his lines, so he's incredibly embarrassed. He feels like a fool. He's like, he claims he's gonna quit drinking, and then immediately goes to like drink from his flask, and then like he realizes what he's doing. He spits it out. He throws it out of his trailer. And then he's yelling at himself in the mirror. But what I really like about that is that, like, he's not staring at himself in the mirror. He's staring at the audience. Like, he's pointing to you, you know?
Yeah.
Like, just overall, I thought that scene was great. It was funny, but an undercurrent of, like, deeply tragic as well.
Yeah, I think Leo should get nominated for an Oscar just based on that scene alone. Like, it was just so good.
Yeah, and like I said before, I think this is some of Brad Pitt's best acting as well.
Yeah, and with that scene, it totally leads into his next scene that comes up, where he actually does another brilliant piece of acting.
Yeah, and this time it's actually in the context of the show. Within the movie, he's talking to Luke Perry, and Luke Perry's final performance before he died earlier this year. And he's got the little girl, and like he looks like he's having fun acting, because he's playing he's playing a villain, And instead of just going through it, or maybe not going through it, but instead of just being another time where he's playing the heavy on a show, it seems like he's actually invested and he's really going for it.
Yeah, that whole scene, when it cuts to that scene, it basically is like you are actually watching another movie. You get the sense that this is a completely different movie than what you're actually been seeing the whole time, and Rick puts you into this amazing scene, and the way he acts and the way he is just like you said, enjoying the scene and enjoying doing the acting, and he's having fun with it. I didn't want to stop watching that scene. I wanted to see that movie with Leo in it. I wanted more of that, and I think within the movie, like he took this little excerpt out that he was just trying to build Once Upon a Time in Hollywood with, and he made another great, I guess, scene or movie within that, and it was just magical. Like it was so good.
Yeah, it's so interesting because even though we've been watching like a movie in the '60s Hollywood or '60s Los Angeles up until this point, like you get into those scenes and now it's a new movie and you completely forget about everything else, and then something happens to break the narrative. He forgets his line, or the director yells cut because they got the scene or they got the shot, and it's just like, oh yeah, this is like the movie within the movie. Like this isn't what I'm watching. This is like I'm watching. This is what I'm watching. Or it's hard to say it, but yeah, it's incredibly immersive.
Yeah, and honestly, to cap that scene off, when the little girl comes back to Leo or to Rick Dalton's character and says, "That was the best acting I've ever seen in my life." That is literally
Yeah.
during this point when you're sitting there when she says that. That is the literal thoughts that were running through my mind at the same time that she said that. And Tarantino was just like, I'm going to say that out loud and kind of break the fourth wall again and be like, yeah, I know that was good and how good Leo is. And it just topped it for that whole scene. I was just like, that was just brilliant.
Yeah, and also in the context of the movie, it's just such an endearing moment where like he finally gets some validation for all the work he's been doing. Like he's only like he's quote unquote only playing the heavy again, but like still he gets validated by this little girl who has already shown that like how dedicated she is to acting. So it's just it's a wonderful moment for Rick, and it's a nice moment for us, the audience. And yeah, like you said, we all get to agree that was some damn fine acting.
Yeah.
It's a great scene. All right, so just before we get into the climax, because we're about to, I just want to say, the way Sharon Tate is portrayed in this movie is just, it seems like, I think it's to show us just like how well thought of she was in life, and then probably after her death as well. Like just a sweet, nice, beautiful woman, and like all we really see is like her going about her day, picking up a book, going to the movies, and she goes to see her own movie. And when she goes and watches The Wrecking Crew, they didn't add in Margot Robbie. They just used the actual footage of Sharon Tate, and so she's watching herself, and she's also getting to see what the audience feels about her acting, her fighting, that when she was trained by Bruce Lee, her comedic skills. And so like it's a very nice moment. Again, it's still got that current of we're about to see some real ugliness, but on the surface it's just such a nice like memento to her legacy of like remember her for her work or who she was as a person. Don't just remember that she was murdered.
So
And I
they
think that's what he was going for.
so did they wait? So Sharon Tate was actually in the movie Wrecking Crew, right?
Yes. Uh huh.
So they didn't reshoot Margot Robbie into that movie when they were showing it on at the movie theater with her.
Right. That's footage from the actual movie.
So that's the actual Sharon Tate in those scenes. Oh, I didn't even notice that. They
Yeah.
did really well with that.
Yeah,
Huh.
and I think Margot Robbie was pretty well cast. You know, I mean, her eyebrows are a little different, like this and that, blah blah blah. But for the most part, uh, she's got the look, and she like it's all believable to me, and I think it was well cast. And I think we're just gonna skip over the stuff in Italy. It's a fun reminder of spaghetti westerns and how Rick Dalton doesn't take him seriously, but then he ends up doing them, and it kind of gives his career a little bit more of a boost. But still, on the way home, he's talking to Cliff Booth, and he's like, "I don't think I can afford you anymore. I'm gonna sell the house, move into a condo. So am I even really still a LA citizen
Yeah,
if I'm
because
just renting and not owning?"
somehow in those 6 months he ends up finding a
Yeah.
woman and getting married to her, and now and
Yeah.
he's bringing her back. It's like, Rick, come
Yeah.
on, man.
A woman who appears to not even speak English, so like
Yeah.
that's a bold move, man. But yeah, so like he tells Cliff that like he's probably not going to be able to afford him anymore, and so this decade-long friendship that they've cultivated, where they literally see each other pretty much every day, is about to come to an end, and Rick doesn't know what he's going to do, but you know he's cool as a cucumber, so he'll figure something out, or he won't, but he'll get by. Because he just can. But they decide, let's get drunk one more time. Let's have a good old night together, like to kind of cap off this whole friendship. And this is where history takes a very different turn.
Yeah, and there is something significant that happens during all that. Is like all the narration and all of the where they show all the timestamps and like the different times in that, and that's because they knew when oh, I forgot what her name is already. Sharon Tate.
Sharon Tate.
Like what she was doing that night and everything. So and that's kind of how they went into the last act, and they were doing the over narration of the scenes and stuff and showing the timestamps. And I think that's like
Right.
it's significant because it's kind of totally different than the whole rest of the movie. There's they add in this part. It's like, why is this here? It felt like the movie was ending.
Right. To me, I because I'm familiar with the murders, like I know what's happening, and I know what it's building to. But I mean, like also because of like Inglourious Bastards, I kind of get the feeling that things are gonna go differently in Tarantino's world. But even still, like I don't know how they're gonna go differently. Like maybe the Mansons just kill Rick and Cliff. Maybe they bust in and save Sharon Tate at the last second, or whatever. But it's just like there's just this building tension throughout the day, throughout all the different time steps. It's just like it's coming. And then we get to the scene, and Brad Pitt decides tonight's a good night to smoke that acid dipped cigarette. And he takes Brandy for a walk. And I do like that they very, very briefly mention why he's got Brandy's dog food at the house is because he would also house sit for Cliff whenever he was away. So he's just got a couple of cans of dog food because he'd take Brandy over there when he stayed there. I just really like this scene. Like he takes his dog out to go for a walk. Meanwhile, Leo's making what was it, margaritas or pina coladas, whatever. He's making drinks. Yeah. And he kind of has this like, he kind of cocks his head like he thinks that maybe his blender's making a weird noise, but then like when he shuts it off, he hears this shitty muffler on this shitty car filled with shitty hippies, and he like it's already been shown once or twice before in the movie that he does not like hippies. So now seeing them on his private road, like in front of his house, just sets him off. And he goes and yells at the hippies. Tex Watson, Sadie, Patty, and I think Flower Child is the fourth one, who is actually played by the daughter of Uma Thurman and Ethan Hawke. Little tidbit. There's also like 8 different actors and actresses that are the children of celebrities that appear in this, and I think they all appear as Manson family members. You get a Pussycat, who's played by what is her name? Margaret Qualley. I can't remember who her parents are, but Rebel Willis, who's Bruce Willis's daughter, she shows up. Like I said, Maya Hawke, and I think there's 1 or 2 more, but those are the only ones I can remember. But anyways, he gets in their face, and he doesn't know how close he got to death at that moment. But we see inside the car that Tex Watson is cocking the gun. He's got like next to him in the car, but like they agree to leave, and Leo goes back inside. But now they've got a dilemma because they've been seen, so they can't just go and murder Sharon Tate like they planned. And Sadie comes up with this idea that they should go after Rick Dalton because it's Rick Dalton, and also because like she's got this weird like high mindset of these are the people that taught us to kill because we watched them growing up killing, and so we should kill the killers. Like, it's real dumb logic, and I think Tarantino added that in because of how many times he's been criticized for his portrayals of violence in his movies. So he's had to argue against like violence in media leading to violence in real life, like Columbine and all the other mass shooters and everything. Like they always blame violent movies, violent video games, or music. And I think this is kind of his response to that, like having that be the reason they were there, and then what happens to him. So Rick comes back from his walk. He's inside. He's fixing. Well, he's now tripping on acid.
Well, Cliff comes back.
And he's making
Rick's in the pool.
Sorry. Yeah. Rick's now in the pool. His wife Francesca's asleep, and Cliff is making Brandy another roast meal.
Yeah.
And but he's also tripping, so like he's fascinated by the can opener. He turns on the lights and it blinds him, so he shuts him off. And he opens up one of the cans and he's just staring at it. And I thought this was coming in the other scene, like just because for some reason I knew that he was going to taste that food at some point. But this is where he just takes a full-on lick of it. It's such gross-looking food, and like the flavors was rat or possum or some other kind of vermin that doesn't sound incredibly appealing to a human. It's just like, it's funny, but also has that like ugh factor to it. I thought that part was great.
Yeah, I definitely saw it coming. I was just like, that's disgusting. But it was well worth the scene.
Let me ask you this though. Uh, did you think someone was taking a can of dog food to the face?
I don't think so. I don't know. I don't. I'm trying to remember, and I don't think I thought of that. No.
Man, as soon as like he comes around the kitchen island to talk to Brandy about how he's doing the best he can under the circumstances, and he has that can in his hand, I just knew someone was taking a can to the face, and I was not disappointed.
No, in that whole scene, I was just like, man, Rick and Cliff and his new wife are all about to die. Like that's what I thought. I didn't think they were getting out of that at all. I thought it was
Yeah,
they
I
were all
really
about to
wasn't
be
sure.
murdered.
Like for some reason I forgot it's a Quentin Tarantino movie, and Tarantino does not like he, his heroes always win in some form or another. Like they might die in the process, but they win. And uh and so like there's such a tense buildup. The hippies bust in. Um, Tex Watson points his gun at him, and he's like, "Who are you?" And Tex Watson says, "I'm the devil, and I'm here to do the devil's business," which is what he said in real life to. I want to say it wasn't Sharon Tate. I think it was Jay Sebring or the other guy, um, but he says that. Brad Pitt's just, nah, it was something dumber than that, like Rex or something. Like, just
Yeah,
thought that was such a fun little like poke against his like cool bad guy moment of saying that line.
yeah. And then he also Brad Pitt's Cliff was like, "Is this real?" Like he was like, "You're real, right?" You're real.
I'm
Because
as real as a donut.
he's tripping on acid the whole time.
Yeah. Uh, but he sees his moment, so he gives Brandy the call, and Brandy goes straight for the gun hand, and it all kicks off, and for the next, I don't know, 10 minutes, it's just brutal, bloody revenge. It's
Yeah.
just like such a crazy scene. Like Sadie comes after him with a knife, and he just fucking yeets this can of it's probably still a steel can at that point of dog food straight into the bridge of her nose, like embeds that nose into her face. So she's down for the moment. Tex is getting ripped apart by Brandy, and then Big Patty tackles him across the coffee table, and he's got that knife like all the way in his hip, and he like just lightly taps the end of it, which was like it made me cringe just thinking about how much that would hurt to like put any more pressure on that. But then he just like his look goes from like surprise and pain to just like, all right, my turn. Then he just bashes her face into everything, and the music crescendos. It's fucking nuts. And then he realizes Tex is down, so he whistles for Brandy. Brandy goes after Sadie, and then he just fucking curb stomps Tex, and it's brutal. But like knowing what they did in what really happened, it feels like such bloody good revenge. Like it's just like, yeah, fuck yeah.
Yeah, dude, the whole like beginning of that is just so amazing. And when he's smashing the girl's face in, I was like, oh, he's got her a couple of times. He's gonna quit, and he doesn't quit. He keeps going and going and going and going.
Keeps going.
And then she doesn't have a face anymore. There's literally nothing there. After
Yeah.
he's done, it's just so good.
Honestly, when he was banging her head against the phone, I thought he was gonna like catch her eyes on the receiver. Like I was just
Yeah.
like, oh boy. Uh, So finally, Sadie's had enough of getting ripped apart by the dog. She scares it off by just panic firing the gun once. Somehow Rick does not hear that, but Brandy runs off and runs back to Francesca's room, and she opens the door, looks around, lets Brandy in, and they close the door, and they're out of the fight. Cliff goes after Sadie, who crashes through the glass door, finally getting Rick off his ass, sort of, and so now Cliff's down for the count from that knife to the hip, and Sadie's blasting the gun. She's screaming, she's flailing about. Rick gets out of the pool, runs to the little shed, and like it kind of seems like he's just gonna go hide, but then he comes back. Hell with that fucking flamethrower.
Yeah,
It's just.
God
Damn, dude.
That whole thing, like, okay, he didn't just get out of the pool. She was in the pool shooting the gun, and he was like creeping over to her like he didn't understand what was happening. It's like, dude, there's a crazy bloody girl with a gun in the air shooting, and Rick's just like, what's happening? And then he has the thought of, okay, she's in the pool, immobile. He could go get anything else. He could just call the police. He could do anything. No, in Rick's mind, he's like, I have a fucking flamethrower. I'm going to go get that. And then I'm going to set her ass on fire. Excessively.
And he does.
He's just like, yeah.
He torches her fucking face off.
I love that that's his thought. He's just like, I got a flamethrower. Let's just go see if it works. That's how I'm going to kill her. Yeah.
Well, when Cliff goes, he goes into that tool shed earlier so that he can grab some supplies so he can go up on the roof to fix the antenna. And I missed it the first time, but when I watched the movie the second time, the flamethrower is just sat up against the wall, like in that shed. So, you know, it Chekhov's gun, like it's in there, and if you know that, or if you spot it, you know that it's probably coming back.
Yeah.
But like the first time through, I did not know it was in there, but I kind of had the feeling, like maybe. And he comes out strapped with it and just fucking sets her on fire. Insane.
It was a great ending to like a great movie. Because in the whole beginning, you know, it builds and builds and builds. And you get to see amazing acting, amazing things. And then at the end, you finally get some relief of, like, some ass whooping just happened. And we got to see some brutality and just some crazy thing that you didn't expect to happen at all. Like, if you weren't, you know, if you didn't know anything that happened. And then it just happens and it's just amazing and brilliant, and you're enthralled the whole time, and you just don't know where it's going to go as they're fighting.
Also, it ends in the pool earlier in the movie when Rick's talking about living next to Polanski. He's like, I'm one pool party away from, you know, maybe being in Polanski's next movie. And then at the end of the scene, it ends in the pool. And then sure enough, he gets to go have a drink with Sharon, and maybe like the ending is a bit ambiguous, but like it's definitely leaning towards like now he's gotten in with them, so he'll finally get to maybe work with them. Maybe this will be like the relaunch of his career.
Yeah, I think
that was a nice poetic turn.
Yeah, I think at the end of the movie, it definitely gives Rick and Cliff both like a hero's ending. It shows that Cliff is by far the baddest badass there is, and that Rick is going to get his day again and be a star. And I think that's, you know, throughout the whole movie, I think Leo and Brad, like, they work so hard in that to give Cliff and Rick's characters so much that I think that was kind of deserved. It was like a deserved ending for both of them. And it felt good to see, honestly.
Yeah, but like I said earlier, it also, like, once again, uh, Cliff takes all the hits, and he's the one who ends up in the hospital, and Rick gets to smile for the camera. You know, he gets his happy ending. So like, it does seem like they both got a good ending, but it also like still wraps up of like he's still the stuntman, he's still the actor. You know, so it's uh, a really well wrapped up ending. And then after the movie ends, the credits start rolling, and then there's a mid credit scene where Rick Dalton's doing an ad for Red Apple cigarettes, which have been known since at least Pulp Fiction, if not Reservoir Dogs. That like that's the made up brand that all of Tarantino's characters use, except Rick Dalton. I think he's smoking Pall Malls, or he's definitely smoking a different brand. Cliff Booth smokes Red Apples, but Rick Dalton smokes something else. But at the end, he's doing this ad, and he's like next to a cardboard cutout, and he does his whole line, he does his whole spiel. He takes a last drag, and then the director yells cut. He immediately throws it on the ground and stomps out. He's just like, that is fucking disgusting. And who did this cutout? I've got a fucking double chin. Like, it's just such a fun way to like have one last wrap up of the movie, is showing that like Rick is still kind of a pissy actor, but also just shows that like for the most part Tarantino characters are fairly working class, and they seem to all smoke Red Apple cigarettes, which are probably one of the cheaper brands. Meanwhile, Rick Dalton will take the money to do the commercial, but he also smokes more high-end cigarettes probably. And so like I just thought it was funny that like Tarantino would shit on his own fake brand like that.
Yeah, it kind of wraps up the whole movie, honestly. But yeah, I didn't. Like, I totally forgot about that end credit scene until you just brought it up, or mid credit scene. And yeah, and I've watched most of Tarantino's movies, but I guess I don't like deep dive into it, and I didn't know that that was like a big thing out of all of his movies that he had.
Yeah, he's always had fake brands. I'm not sure if it was like a marketing thing or if it was just a stylistic choice, but he's always had fake brands. Red Apple is probably the one that's had like the most enduring legacy, because it comes up in pretty much every movie. In The Hateful Eight, the narrator talks about how somebody's smoking a manzana rojo, which is Spanish for red apple. In Pulp Fiction, somebody, I think it's Bruce Willis's character, orders or asks for a pack from a bartender. He's just like, hey, let me get a pack of red apples. But yeah, it's just little sprinkles in the background of pretty much all of his movies. I think there's a billboard in Kill Bill for Red Apple cigarettes. So it's product placement in his movie. And then Wolf Tooth, I'm pretty sure it's one of his brands. I meant to look up before we got started, like all of his fake brands that show up, but I forgot to. But Red Apples are the ones that are absolutely, definitely Tarantino's. All right, well, I don't know about you. We've been talking about this for almost 2 hours. I think we pretty thoroughly covered this. I had a great time with this movie. Any final thoughts?
No,
You got anything else you want to say before we wrap it up?
No, I had a great time. Tarantino is a genius. He's amazing. Thought the movie was great. Can't wait to see his next thing, whatever it's going to be. It'll be his 10th movie,
Yeah, because
right?
yeah, I think it's going to be his last one, because he counts Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2 as one movie, which is why this was considered the ninth. So, yeah, next one could be the big finale.
Yeah, so it'll definitely be something interesting. But next week we are going to have like a double feature. I think we're going to do Hobbs and Shaw, and then I think Scary Stories comes out next week as well.
Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, yeah.
So we're probably going to be posting both of those videos next week. It's going to be really fun, but thanks for watching, guys. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Bye bye.